Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode number 7. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here on this Friday edition of the show. Dave, we are just 24 hours away from the Steelers' first preseason game, their opener against the Seattle Seahawks. We're really excited for that one. All the training camp coverage and all the stuff I've reported will become meaningless, and everyone else gets to watch the games and make their own evaluations, but should be a lot of fun.
You know, you kind of joke there, but it really is the truth, right? We use you up until the first preseason game. Then we say, we don't need Alex no more. We got the tape to go by here. No, with all seriousness, it is good to kind of use you as a filter and eyes to start, kind of forming some opinions on what to look for the most, I think. I know that's the way I am, and it kind of paints a picture of me, kind of what to expect with some of these groups and offensive line, who's going to be playing where and that kind of thing there. So, I've got to admit, I get more excited about preseason games than I do watching practices on Twitter.
Right.
Happy Friday, by the way.
There is certainly all good jokes have a kernel of truth. And my joke about, no one caring about my reports has a kernel of truth to it. And I understand you have a game, and certainly what you do inside stadiums matters more than what you're doing at a practice in a controlled, coordinated, slower pace setting against opponents and players and teams that what you do in stadiums really is what defines you. I think what you do in practice gives you the opportunity, and then what you do in games is what defines you and actually gets you onto a roster.
Absolutely. And we're going to try to stay away from doing too much camp recapping in these regular podcasts for obvious reasons, because we dedicate 30 minutes a night to the recaps. And also, obviously, if you have missed or not caught up on the last couple and all, feel free to do that. But real quickly, and we'll get into an injury report here and all in a minute, but what is your biggest takeaway? Let's say you had 3 top takeaways right now from all these camp practices. I think there's 14 in total, and I think you've been to 12 of them, something like that. What would be your 3 biggest takeaways about the 2022 Steelers at this point in the process as they enter their first preseason game?
It's a really good question. I had really given it no thought so far. Just off the top, I would say the ebb and flow of quarterback play, the up and down days and performances of all Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett. There have been days we've come away saying that guy had a really good day. There were days we're coming away with all 3 guys saying that guy had a really poor day. And again, that to me was wholly expected. I've repeated that many times and will probably continue to say that. I imagine that will be reflected inside stadiums where you'll have good plays and bad plays and good reps, bad reps, good games, bad games, etc. Beyond that, the play of the rookie wide receivers, the draft picks, and George Pickens and Calvin Austin, they've certainly been the talk of town so far. Pickens, especially a guy that has all the tools and traits and ability in the role. It's now, can you smooth out the edges and make him a more technical and refined route runner? If you do that, you're going to have one heck of a player. And then third, probably something on defense, just general, quality play overall by the Steelers defense, being aggressive on the football, being physical, being high energy, high intensity. Maybe no real great conclusions to draw for the regular season, but I think overall the defense has been the better unit of the 2.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Before we get into kind of what Mike Tomlin had to say during his Thursday morning press conference, why don't you, for anybody maybe have not listened to the Thursday night recap podcast, give a overview of where this team is from a health standpoint?
Sure. The guys who did not practice on Thursday include Benny Snell, Derek Watt, Chase Claypool, Marcus Allen, Alex Highsmith, Jannard Avery, Montrevious Adams, Kevin Dotson, Zach Gentry. Najee Harris was limited. Tyson Alualu worked in 7 shots, but that was it in terms of the team session. Aside from obviously the big names, Cam Hayward's not going to play in this game. TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, those guys will not play in this one. I think most of the names I rattled off there will not play in tomorrow's game. Mateo Durant, by the way, was limited yesterday as well, so I'm uncertain if he'll go for Saturday's game. But guys like Snell and Marcus Allen, Highsmith, Avery, Adams, etc., maybe Gentry plays. I'm not really sure what the issue with him there is, but most of those guys should miss because they've missed a lot of time so far.
I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm with you that probably a good chunk, if not all, of those names that did not practice will not play Saturday night. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say I bet Mateo Durant does.
He needs to. He cannot miss. Cannot afford it.
I would be groveling, asking to get on that field if I'm him. If obviously if I'm 80, 85% or more for sure, because that guy needs to get on the field, and because if not, he could wind up. Who knows if they get Najee Harris back after this game and Benny Snell and those kind of things, that might be one of the positions they decide to make part of the first 5 players cut or something like that. But yeah, I think a good, and Mike Tomlin kind of addressed during his press conference, we'll start getting into that now. He said, is anybody ruled out yet? He says, not at this point. I'm always going to have an inclusive mentality. That's the same thing as leaving the light on, right?
Yeah, it just sounds a little more highbrow.
It sounds better. Obviously, if somebody has missed a significant amount of practice time, I probably won't play them because I'm setting them up for failure. But at this point, all of those that are working in some capacity, I'm having an inclusive mentality. That might be the new bingo word right there, the new phrase that pays. Inclusive mentality. So that was kind of to be expected there. Even so, with the concussed birth certificates and the long list of injuries, there's probably going to be a good, 15, 18 guys that probably don't play in this contest.
Sure, and that's typical. I think what's also interesting, just from a kind of, to use the Tomlin phrase, global perspective, first time Pittsburgh's only had 3 preseason games. So how do you balance that? Last year they had 4 because they played in the Hall of Fame game. So their schedule really hadn't changed too much, while everyone else besides Dallas had 3. So I wonder what Tomlin's approach will be, knowing that he's now working under the 3-game setup. Will some starters play perhaps a bit longer? I assume next week will be the warm-up game, quote unquote, for the Steelers. But just interesting to see how Tomlin handles that now that Pittsburgh's officially on that 3 preseason game slate.
You like the 3 preseason game slate?
No, I hate it. I want the old school 8 when they play just 9 of them and just the whole month of August.
I'm with you. I'd love anywhere between 4 and 16 of them.
Yeah, it was 16 game regular season, 4 game preseason. It was perfect, and they just had to go and screw it up. And NFL's infinite greed.
Of course, we don't have to run down and cover kicks in the fourth quarter to do that. I understand why it is the way it is, but man, I sure did like having 4 preseason games. And I think it gives guys a chance to fight for their jobs too. I mean, here we are now, and for all practical purposes, some guys are going to be out of jobs here. 5 guys are going to be out of jobs here very soon. And
I hate that more. The stupid, they brought back the whole cut downs from 90 to 85. Then they're going 85 to 80 a week after that. Just they had it perfect a couple of years ago. It was a 90 to 53, just 1 cut, and then they had the 4 preseason games, 16 regular season games. That was perfect. They just have to go and screw around with a good thing.
These guys on the bottom of the roster. Numbers 80 through 90, I bet if you polled all of them, they'd say, man, I'd sure like 2 games to at least to kind of prove myself,
Right.
But obviously they get overruled by the rest of the guys in the NFLPA, the rest, the more established guys that nobody says you have to play the 12-year veteran in a preseason game, So it's more about the young players, at least at the start as well, too. But Look, that's over our pay grade, I guess.
Well, it's just dumb because they're by the time they go to 80, they'll be at the last preseason game, which is the game where you don't want the veterans to play and you want all the young guys to play. And so that third game means the most for 80 through 90. And now those guys get cut. So it just seems so counterproductive.
Right. So not only are you trimming the amount of games, you're trimming the roster along with it there. Yeah, I think it's silly, but and then what's going to happen is you're going to get into that last preseason game there, and you're going to have to play a couple of those guys that you know are going to make the roster. That and then one of them's going to tear up a knee, and then you're going to say, "Oh, this preseason's garbage," you know, and that it inevitably happens that way and all. So. I'm with you. It doesn't make sense. I mean,
and then they're going to go to 18 regular season games, and then we play just 2 preseason games to keep it for I think the CBA mandates 20 games total per year. So that's going to reduce it more. I know we're just old men yelling at the cloud right now, but we got to vent it out a little bit. Me and you.
You know what? You have aged quite a bit.
Like the reverse Benjamin Button, just aging forward rapidly.
You really have. I was chatting with Matthew Marksey, who's written for me for a while. You have really 23 going on 43 throughout this process. I realize you're older than 23 now. I don't know exactly how old you are, but I mean, you have gotten old and set in your ways. I like it. I mean,
yeah, I'm wearing my pants real high with the suspenders and watching Matlock before bed at 8.
The Wheel of Fortune.
yeah. I'm going to win one of these days. I want to go on.
All right.
Anyway.
I'm with you. You don't have to convince me on any of that. And I know a lot of people say, first preseason game, you get into the fourth quarter and but you don't know who anybody is. Yeah, you do. I know who they are. Alex knows who they are. A lot of our listeners knows who they are. And we'll watch every damn minute of that, all 22, about 10 times each because of it, because it is kind of that important. All right. What else did Mike Tomlin have to say, Alex?
Well, obviously the quarterback situation, top of the list for fans to look for, and no surprising comments there. Basically outlined the way that we predicted it would be outlined. Mitch Trubisky will get the start, followed, although Tomlin did not explicitly say it, very heavily implied that Mitch and Rudolph lead number 2, and then Kenny Pickett number 3. On a rough outline of things, Tomlin said first string will play the first quarter, the second string will play second, third quarter, and then third string will play fourth quarter. Obviously, some mixing and matching. That's not black and white. No hard and fast rules there for any of this, but that's the general outline of things. But the quarterback order should go Trubisky, Rudolph, and then Pickett.
And I think that's kind of to be expected. If the Steelers lose the toss, I would do an onside kick to start the game because I want to see the offense with the football. I'd like to see about 18 possessions by the offense in this game.
Right. Just don't put anyone out there on defense. Have just one guy. Let Seattle score on one play and then just get the offense out.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't care about win or losing this thing, but man, I want to watch a lot of offensive football in this game because I have a good sense. I know what this defense is and isn't at this point. Now, look, obviously, I'm looking forward to watching guys like Mark Robinson, Buddy Johnson, some of those guys. Guys that we've talked about along the process here, back into the depth chart kind of guys. But I really am more geeked to watch the offense, all 3 quarterbacks, Jaylen Warren. I mean, is there a guy outside of the draft picks on the offensive side of football other than, say, Mitch Trubisky, Alex? I mean, if you were to build, I guess, a list of top 5 guys on the offensive side of the ball that you know are going to play, that you're really looking forward to see playing. Obviously, Pickens and Calvin Austin and Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky would be in there, but not too far behind is going to be Jaylen Warren at this point, I think.
Sure, a guy that's gained so much buzz, and he certainly had a good camp overall, bounced back from the occasional tough day that he's had. You see the power, that bowling ball kind of stocky build that he's had, has caught the ball well overall. His pass pro's been strong and competitive. He's worked as the up back on special teams, so he's hitting all the right notes. But Anthony McFarland having a quietly good camp as well. Benny still, I think, is pretty firmly established on this roster at this point, so Warren's still fighting for that spot. It may be 2 dogs, 1 bone for Jaylen Warren versus Anthony McFarland, though Master Teague has come on strong as well, and he'll get a lot of burn in the second half of this game as well.
It's going to be awkward watching Mason Rudolph audition for the Seahawks in this game. That's one minor thought I have. The other is we went into this off season thinking, and especially after they drafted. Did you know there's 4 quarterbacks on the roster, by the way, and they drafted 2 of them? I'm not sure Mike Tomlin knows that. But anyway, I kind of went into this thing thinking, man, there's no reason to play Mason Rudolph that much in the preseason. They know who Mason Rudolph is. The fact that they are going to play him probably, the good middle portion of this game, I don't know, leads me to believe that he really is in the battle to potentially win this spot, or they legitimately are trying to showcase him to get him out of town.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still battling for that spot. I think Trubisky would have to fall on his face for him to lose that spot. I think it's been Trubisky's job to lose since the moment that he was signed and since the spring when Trubisky ran as the ones. I mean, he's been the starter throughout this entire thing. He's been the front runner, and he's got to show that inside his stadium. I still think they're going to keep Rudolph unless they just get blown away by an offer. Some quarterback goes down somewhere and someone's offering a 4th or maybe a 5th round pick for him. I think generally they just want to keep the quarterbacks they have options. They don't know how the regular season's going to look with injuries and play, etc. They just want to make sure all those guys are getting reps and they have the, most comprehensive and accurate and fair evaluation of all these quarterbacks because the reps overall between the top 3 have been split very evenly.
Are they handling this right from what you can tell so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's no,
other than Oladokin.
I mean, that aside, I won't gripe about that here in the moment. And even that is handled right in the sense of you can't really afford to give Oladokin reps. I understand why he's not getting reps. He's not going to play this year. If he does, God help us. So you have to find out all that you can about your top 3. To me, that just goes back to the idea of just don't draft Oladokin in the first place. So putting that aside, yeah, I think they're handling it right. I mean, there is no, quote unquote, right answer to this all. And this is pretty new for the Steelers. Tomlin's never had to do this before. There's been no true quarterback competition since 2000, 2002. So, it's been a while for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think overall they've given guys equal opportunities and mixed and matched Rudolph and Pickett. You could argue that maybe, some guys should rotate more with the ones. Rudolph really hasn't gotten time there. Neither has Pickett. But I think overall it's been, fine process.
Okay. All right.
So what else are you looking for? I think in terms of other guys to look for on the offensive side of the football, I mean, obviously the offensive line. I really want to watch James Daniels in particular. I imagine he'll play the first quarter.
And Cole, man. Yeah.
And Cole. But I think Daniels, to me, I just felt a little concerned based on the training camp play. And again, my window into that can be limited. And I'm not watching all 22. I'm not reviewing plays. And then team, guys can kind of get lost. But watching some of the 1v1s, I've just seen Daniels struggle more than I thought he would. So hopefully, if he plays well Saturday, I'll feel more comfortable about things. If he doesn't play well, then I'll be more concerned. So I'm kind of, on edge with James Daniels.
And look, we could have some serious 10-minute conversations about all 5 of those guys that are probably going to start Saturday night. Dan Moore, his second year, hoping to see, that a step forward in his game. At left guard, you got Kendrick Green, who was your center last year. Can this guy go back to having at least more success and staying off the ground at the position he mostly played in college? At center, Mason Cole, the one of the new kids on the block, the guy that's going to be your starting center after a disastrous year last year with Green at center. James Daniels, as you just mentioned, the guy that kind of their prize, one of their prize, free agents, if you will, and a guy that you even had circled as a guy that they should go after here. And then you get over to right tackle and Chikwamo Okorafor, a guy who they gave some pretty decent money to this offseason that you really expect to maybe exceed his ceiling at this point. Or hope that he can exceed his ceiling at this point. The good news is, and we've kind of talked about this throughout the entire training camp, is that at this point last year, there was so much mixing and matching going on with the offensive line that there wasn't a lot of continuity. At this point, these 5 should have some continuity, even with 2 of them being new adds during the offseason, right?
Right. Largely speaking, the offensive line has been healthy throughout camp. And again, Pittsburgh goes, full tackling sessions every day that they're in pads and no major injuries. Obviously, Dotson's nicked up right now, but Kendrick Green has rotated in with the one. So it's not like Green ran as a backup until Dotson got hurt. And then he worked with the ones. I mean, Green has worked next to Mason Cole and Dan Moore for a large chunk of camp overall. So there's continuity. There's a lot of reps there. Obviously, you're going to get some really quality reps and opportunities. Saturday night, I don't expect things to look and be perfect all the time. This is their first time out inside a stadium. Offensive line's a unit. It's not just a individual, individually looked group. It's a one guy fail, we all fail kind of thing. But excited to see it. And again, really have eyes on James Daniels, but certainly watching all of these guys.
Mike Tomlin was asked about Kenny Pickett and what can you learn about him in the face of a live defense that he hasn't already learned about him throughout this process. And he said a lot. This guy hasn't even been in a live pocket yet. None of the quarterbacks have. And that component of it is significant in terms of their play, their ability to operate and make decisions in a timely manner, their ability to absorb the punishment that comes with the game. And let's hope there's no punishment. a lot of punishment going on. There's so much involved in live quarterback play, their ability to protect the football. It's a big opportunity for him and others. I like how he kind of circles that somewhat to Kenny, but then inclusive to the entire quarterback group, because this is foreign territory, in a sense. A rookie high drafted quarterback, and then the other two guys that you're trying to choose from who will be your starter to open a season. So there is a lot more riding on quarterback play than previous years, for sure.
Definitely. I think what the preseason games, you're looking at everything and anything in terms of when you walk inside a stadium. But I think the things you look at the most are the things that cannot be or are not replicated and simulated during practice. Quarterbacks, they can't be hit during camp. You touch a quarterback, coach is going to yell at you for it and make you do a lap or something, take you out of the drill. So how do the quarterbacks handle that? They've had the freedom to get to kind of run around and have that forever clock and things that you want people to do inside a stadium. Special teams, you really can't rep that, perfectly and really at all. It's kind of skeleton together in practice. You put that together in a game, it's a totally different feel. So who does well there? That's such an important component of trying to make a roster for a guy on the fringes. And so those are the things I really get excited about, because you could simulate, 11v11, full tackling sessions and install stuff during practice. You really can't simulate a quarterback under siege and getting hit. And how does he respond from that? How does he, stand up in the face of pressure that's barreling down right at him? How do you, handle kick returns and punt returns and your punt block team and stuff like that? So those are the things that I think are even more important inside stadiums, because it's really the first time that you're watching them, because you don't get that stuff during training camp.
All right, about 8.5 minutes from Tomlin of nothing. That was very informative, as informative as 8.5 minutes of nothing from Tomlin can be. We obviously we didn't learn a lot. I thought it was a good question about Hamilcar Rashid. I'm getting good at saying the name. Hope he sticks around.
Right.
I learned this name before you did, and I'm able to pronounce it pretty regularly. Hamilcar Rashid is the obviously the outside linebacker, claimed off waivers from the New York Jets a couple of days ago. He takes the spot of Ulysses Gilbert III, who was waived injured, and since has cleared waivers and landed on IR at a full salary as well too. So
there's no split salary on that.
No, his split salary actually came in the first 2 years of his contract, and the second 2 years have no split salary attached to it.
Oh
wow! So a full salary on IR there for the Steelers. Mike Tomlin was asked about Hamilcar Rashid, and he says, I just walked off the field with him and got to meet him a little bit. I remember when he came out in the draft, he was a guy that had our attention. He's an outside linebacker body type. I think he had 14 sacks his junior year at Oregon State, and that captured our attention. But it's a get-to-know process, and we'll be excited about giving him an opportunity to show himself to us. He's a guy that's not a rookie. He's been in this thing, so I'm hopeful that he can learn fast enough to be a contributor in some form or fashion on Saturday. Amen. Praise the Lord. That's my addition onto that. I love edge rushers. I love edge rushers. I love edge rushers. And you're going to have 5 guys. This is my terrible take on Thursday. Basically, you're going to have 5 guys going at five dogs, 1 bone, I think, at this point, potentially. And all 5 of these dogs have all been in an NFL stadium for a preseason game, and more than one on top of it. So I think that adds a little bit of an intrigue to this first preseason game, because you're not going to have TJ Watt. You're probably not going to have Alex Highsmith. You're probably not going to have Jannard Avery. So you're going to have the rest of these guys, Tuzar, Skipper, the other new kid, Carter, obviously Derek Tuska, Hamilcar, Rashid, and who am I missing there? Delonte Scott. And you've talked a lot about Delonte Scott throughout this process as well, too. So I think those are 5 guys that, once again, they shouldn't be overwhelmed. They should know what's going on when they get, even Hamilcar Rashid, he's played a couple of games here. So this is something I think, fans should get excited about watching Saturday night. Are these 5 younger guys all vying for it? And pay attention. You better pay attention to their special team snaps as well, too. And that's where Derek Tuska and probably maybe even a guy like Delonte Scott might have a little bit of edge in that category. But I would pay attention, right after that game book gets printed, after the game, go look down who played what snaps and what amount in there, because that's usually a little bit of a sign on top of it. And if any of those guys get in there, make a special teams tackle or knock a football loose or recover a football, all that means something.
Rashid Jr., number 46 in your programs, number 1 in Dave's heart. And so we'll see what he can do out there. Yeah, some new guys.
We've talked about him more than once during the pre-draft process, because wasn't he a Senior Bowl kid as well?
I'd have to check. I know he had as Tomlin said, a really strong junior season, something like 22 tackles for loss and 14 something sacks. Then he had a weird senior year. I think he had COVID. He had got some other stuff going on, had just 2 tackles for a loss and 0 sacks. He ran a terrible 40 time. His 3-cone times were abysmal, but he had a really good, vertical and broad jump, showing some of that explosiveness. So interesting guy, has a good body type for the position, and he'll play. And so will Rondell Carter, a new number there, number 44. And so, Jameer Jones last year made the team because of his special teams work, led the team in special teams tackles, and got a roster spot because of it. Tuzar Skipper years ago had a great camp overall, but really didn't do much on special teams. Didn't make the roster. And I know we talk about that. Some people will get mad when we talk about it as much as we do, but it is so important for those backup guys, because Avery probably won't play a lot on special teams. So your number 4 better play a ton. And Tuska did that. He's a pretty, multi-phase kind of guy. Can someone else push him? They'll have to be a multi-phase guy in special teams as well.
All right. They're going to keep 4 or 5. It's going to be 4 or 5 at outside linebacker. So,
yeah, I think 4 is where I'm leaning right now, although the injuries at inside linebacker might be opening the door for 5 outside, but I think right now still 4 edge guys.
Okay. Extended thoughts on UG3.
Just unfortunate. I mean, he's had a lot of injuries in his career. The talent's been there. He's having a nice camp overall. He was healthy last year, and that was good, but 3 of the 4 years he's been on IR. And so that's probably going to be end of the line for UG3.
Tell the people about the roster move that took place yesterday.
Yeah, just a minor one, but they're all important to you and I. Javon McKinley, the receiver, was waived injured, suffered a shoulder injury on Wednesday late in that practice. And then Christian Blake, who's got some NFL experience, I think with Atlanta, was signed. So he'll be number 21, wearing McKinley's old number. But if you're looking at the roster, hopefully it's been updated, but number 21 is Christian Blake.
How did you know? You're the first one to catch that, and and it had to be a pretty good distance. Was it a different body type, or just how he acted as number 21 came down the hill?
Right. Yeah, he's a pretty kind of similar body type.
Give us some insider secrets of yours, Alex.
I'm going to put the listeners to sleep here because no one cares about this. So they're in warm-ups to start. I have a checklist of names that I'm looking for injured guys. I have them all written down. I check them off whenever I see them or don't see them. Didn't see a 21 in the receiver line there, so I went, okay, I think McKinley's out. And then they're in stretch line, and I don't see him come down, but I hear Mike Tomlin yell out for Frizz Jackson's name. He says, "Hey Frizz, hey Frizz," and I turn my head to that, and I see a 21 walking that comes up to Frizz Jackson, shakes his hand, kind of daps him up, and I see 21 walk over to Deontay Johnson, daps him up, and I go, that guy came down late. He just got introduced to the coach. That sounds like a new guy. And then the face didn't look similar either. So I said, it's probably a new guy there. And so that's usually the introductions there kind of tell you that guy's new.
You're good. You're good.
Thank you. And now everyone's asleep.
And I think about 20 minutes after the time that you put that out there, I was already writing something up. I was
trying to give you a heads up there. Yeah, so you could get a little head start on it.
I cheated. I made a fill in the blanks kind of posted at that point. But good on you to catch that for sure. And now a byproduct of that will be after today. The Steelers will have 4 players, Alex, on injured reserve at this point in Ulysses Gilbert III, Jeremy McNichols, T.D. Moultrie, and Javon McKinley at this point. That's nearly $2.5 million in salary there. Now,
even considering like the split salaries?
Yeah, because
really?
You got look, even your split salaries now, McNichols' split salary is $480,000. And yeah, because he was already on a veteran benefit contract because he's got enough time in. So luckily,
and then usually 3 without the split is what's pushing that number up more. Right.
That's almost $1 million. That's with bonus probation and everything, that's $996,960. So he's right at $1 million there. So it's like, I don't know, $2.34 million or something on IR at this point now. Obviously, this part of the year, it doesn't matter as much because injured reserve doesn't count against, the cap until week 1, or until the final cut downs, until that magical switch over to from the rule of 51 rule when all the teams have to be cap compliant and all like that. So we are expecting, I would think, Jeremy McNichols, I think he's been on IR a pretty good time. So that I think the span of time for him in an injury settlement may have already expired at this point. Moultrie and Gilbert are obviously a different story. I would expect them to do some sort of injury settlement as long as it's not a knee or something like that injury with him. And Gilbert, who knows what's going to happen there, because those ankle injuries can be tricky. But I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with an injury settlement with him either. So it'd just be something to watch moving forward here, because man, $2.3 million going against the cap. That's a lot of money at this point of the offseason right now.
It is. I didn't realize it was that much. It adds up quickly, as you said, and there's still a whole couple preseason games to go.
Yeah.
And probably not the last guys to go on IR. So that's why you budgeted an extra space.
Yeah.
That Omar. I know people say, well, you got to have $10 million or $9 million in extra space for other reasons, and these are some of the other reasons.
People get mad at me too for pulling cap space aside, and it's not even my cap space, But I have learned over the years that you got to kind of budget in, at least for the start of the season. At the very least, you better have $1.5 million budgeted in for IR,
Mm-hmm. And we're past that now. I mean, that could change, I guess. But I mean, and as you said, the numbers go up as salaries increase year over year. Right. I mean, these numbers will also go up.
And look, even if you do an injury settlement with these guys now, let's say it's a 3-week, a 3-week injury settlement with some of these players. I mean, you're still talking about, $125,000 right around in there, because what you do is you take that and you divide it by the number of games and then times it by the number of weeks, at that point. So let's take TD Moultrie, for example. If we divide that by 17, you times it by 3. I mean, that's like an $80,000 injury settlement with him. And if you start having a bunch of those can obviously start adding up as well too. So I would expect we'll start getting some of these injury settlements here in the next couple of days.
Hey, real quick, total aside. So skip ahead for 30 seconds if you don't want to listen to a total aside. Are you on the arc right now? I saw Vegas got flooded last night. You said there was a big monsoon. Are you rowing a boat right now?
Oh, no. My wife did such a good job in finding us with a house and all like that way back when we had got here and all. We're not on the low side anything, and we have never experienced like flooded streets in our neighborhood or anything like that. There was a nice monsoon that rolled through last night, but they move so quick. Now the thing about it is they drop so much water in certain areas. Yes, there is flooding that occurs because this town is just not. It's a desert. It's just not set up for all that. Now we do not. Now, unlike back in Florida where we came from, you think nothing about going out and driving during a rainstorm or whatnot. We stay off the streets when it rains here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just because it's so foreign, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's foreign. People don't know how to drive in it.
Yeah.
You never know what road you're going to, where the flooding is going to take place and that kind of thing. But as soon as it comes, it almost goes too. As soon as it stops raining, so it's not something that sticks around here a long period of time. It's just when it rains, you got to be cautious here because of the lay of the land and yada yada. So yeah, we're fine.
All right. Well, glad you're good. Anyway, back to the Steelers here. Kind of look at the Steelers secondary now. A lot of new pieces there and some intrigue in that group. What are you looking for, Dave, when it comes to Pittsburgh secondary in their preseason opener?
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they play these starters here in Witherspoon and Levi Wallace and what the nickel looks like. And is Millette in the slot? Is Cameron Sutton in the slot? Is how much does Carl Joseph play in the slot? You've talked a lot about that through this process. So I want to kind of see the mix and match. A couple of the younger kids, the Carlins Platel, and Chris Steele, finally get my eyes on there. So there's a lot of little things in there, but I think first and foremost, it starts with the starters and interested. I mean, do you think they're going to play Cam Sutton? You would think they're going to play him a couple series if he's healthy enough, right?
Yeah, that goes back to Tomlin's comments about the starters. Maybe if he plays, it'll be just the first drive or two. I don't think he'll play much, if at all, in this one. I am excited to see Levi Wallace. Again, he's kind of been more defined second team the last couple of days of practice. I still think he'll be one of the top three cornerbacks when this team goes sub-package week one, but I want to see him, want to see Witherspoon's consistency, assuming that he plays. And you're right, the slot work's been divided up pretty heavily. I think Cam Sutton's going to be your week one starter in the slot overall, but Arthur Millette's got a lot of time there. Carl Joseph's got a lot of time there. And Joseph has had a really good camp, and he's really, truly pushing hard for a roster spot. Right now, it's a competitive, loaded room, and there's a lot of guys he's fighting and battling right now. But I think Joseph has done just about all that he can to try to really play his way onto this 53.
Okay.
And then, at safety, Miles Killebrew, is he fading a little bit? Justin Lane's fading a bit. Those are two guys that certainly could and probably need to have good outings against the Seahawks to try to, get back or secure the roster spot.
All right. I think we've kind of covered both sides of this pretty good. Of anything else you kind of looking for?
Any tight ends, some of the other rookies, Connor Hayward, Kevin Rader, Jay Sternberger make some plays. Sternberger has the athleticism. Can he get free on a route against some, poor rookie linebacker and try to make a play that way? Haven't talked about that group too much. And so I think getting eyes on them, getting eyes on their inline blocking will be important. Can Connor Hayward be an effective blocker? Can Jay Sternberger be an effective blocker? He's a bigger body, but certainly not known for his inline wide tight end type of work. That'll be important in Pittsburgh. Connor Hayward probably plays some fullback in this game as well, assuming Derek Watt will not play, which is a pretty safe assumption at this point. So all those rookies, Mark Robinson, etc., you have an eye on for sure.
We're not going to see any Connor Hayward into the line tight end, are we?
You might. He's done it.
Really?
I wouldn't be shocked. How effective that'll be is a separate question, but he's worked as a tight end. He's done some fullback work with Watt being out, like I mentioned, but he is a true and blue tight end, and that's a lot of off ball, a lot of split zone action, split flow you're going to get with him. So, that'll be probably the majority of it, but has he done some inline 3-point stance work? He has, and we'll see how that looks on Saturday.
Okay. All right. We got that portion of, we got Tomlin covered. We got, the kind of look ahead to the preseason game, right? Anything else we need to cover here?
I just want to mention as well, I had the article today, and I've talked about this and referenced it throughout different podcasts, but the Davis twins, I think, will wreck some offensive lines starting Saturday, Khalil and Carlos Davis, because they're going to come in later against, third string offensive lines, and, young offensive lines that are always new and they're gelling, and there are guys who aren't going to make it and stuff like that. Khalil and Carlos,
they should look like all pros.
They should. They should look like Aaron Donald in this game. But I think they're twitchy, they're athletic, they're just very able to penetrate in one gap. I think those guys are gonna, maybe they'll be up and down in their play. I think Khalil's a little hot and cold, especially, but those guys are gonna have some gaudy looking plays that'll be on all the Twitter highlight reels after this game.
Yeah, and you know what? And we've kind of talked about this through, I think, the nightly podcast as well too. I really am expecting this defense to show out overall quite a bit, because we just talked about, all the linebackers that are going to play in this game are going to have a good deal of experience, except for maybe like a Mark Robinson who's been showing out in camp. You look at the defensive line overall, top to bottom, a lot of experience with these guys, top to bottom. Even the outside linebackers that we just talked about, that are going to play in this game. You're going to have some guys in that secondary it's not an overly youthful group that's going to play from an inexperienced standpoint, that's going to play the majority of the snaps Saturday night. So I'm not saying shutout, but I'm just saying I will be disappointed if they don't hold the score down in this game.
Yeah, if you're one of those degenerates looking to put some money on this game, I think Pittsburgh's going to be the favorite here. Their front seven should win, and they should be able to play good run defense and get pressure on, whether it's Geno Smith or Drew Lock, or I think Jacob Eason is the third string quarterback. And so I would expect Pittsburgh's front seven to do well in this game.
I resemble that remark.
You do. But yeah, I think Pittsburgh's defense, like you said, will keep the score down. If not, that'll be a surprise to me.
All right, shall we get to the email machine?
Yep, let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's see. Chuck Griffith writes in, Dave, prior to the first snap of the preseason game tomorrow night, how would you rate the Steelers' offseason up to this point? Favorite offseason move, least favorite move. All right. How would I rate the Steelers' offseason up to this point? Oh, Lord, that's good. Look, I think they're fine on the defensive side of football. I have thought that for quite a while now. I still would have liked a more experienced, a better option at number 3 outside linebacker than Jannard Avery. Hopefully Jannard Avery exceeds my thoughts on him. But as far as the secondary goes, I think they did it. I mean, look, Larry Ogunjobi, if he's that guy, then I think they've done fine. I just really worry about the offensive side of football here with this team, kind of specifically the offensive line and even more specifically the quarterback position. That's the thing, the quarterback position that bugs me the most. I understand why they did what they did with Trubisky. I understand why they did what they did in the draft with Pickett. The defense better be lights out this year from where I sit right now. And that's really been my thought all along with this. And they better get these young kids in Pickens and Austin to progress quickly and to become huge playmakers in this offense. And that line better be a one run blocking, because all of that's going to have to come into play here. Even the defense might do a good enough job to keep some games under 19 points. I wonder if the offense is going to have enough to score 19 points some weeks. So my favorite offseason move at this point, that's a good question. I'd probably say Larry Ogunjobi. I mean, if that guy is the guy where he left off at before that injury, this guy could be a real difference maker that makes all the rest of those guys even better on that line. My least favorite move, least favorite move. I don't know. Help me
Yeah, it's
out.
always tough. I mean,
help me out with that.
well, it depends on Pickett. I think you liked it a bit more than I did overall. I have some reservations there, and that's not based off camp. That's just based off my thoughts whenever they drafted him. I guess the concern with Pittsburgh, big picture this year, is just your two biggest question marks on your team is your offensive line and your quarterback play, and those are two pretty core key areas that you rather not have question marks about going into a season. Can your offensive line block, and can your quarterback make enough high-level plays? And so we'll see. I mean, there's an unknown to it where you can't say for certain if this group will be good or bad, if the quarterback play will be good and bad. But I imagine the quarterback play will be, at best, hot and cold, with the offensive lines, pass protection being a work in progress. I think the run blocking will be a bit better overall. So when you have question marks there, it's kind of an uphill battle to try to really, truly compete.
I also think too that I don't like the tackle depth. I mean, the jury's still out on their two starters, if we're being honest. But I think they can get by with that. My big concern is I think it's foolish to expect both those tackles to play every snap, during the season. So if that's the case, let's assume both their starting tackles miss the equivalent of a game and a half apiece. What's going to happen behind those guys? I'm not a huge Joe Haig fan. I'm definitely not a Chaz Green fan. Trent Scott's not it, if you ask me. I kind of wonder what's going to happen should any of those guys, have they done enough there at tackle depth to kind of protect themselves?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think tackle depth is certainly weak overall, but I imagine it's hard to have good tackle depth. It's hard to have good just starting tackles in general, So I think a lot of teams are probably saying that around the league. I think Haig is serviceable in spot starts and small quantities. You start asking that guy to start, multi games, then I think you run into big time trouble.
All right, Rick McKee chimes in here. I asked on Twitter, so if you eventually answered back, go ahead and disregard. What's the process as far as signing players after waivers? He says Evans was on the field before we knew McKinley was on. I think he means
Blake. Yeah, Rick asked me this last night. I apologize, I didn't get back to it. So he's asking, what is the process for how a Christian Blake gets signed and is on the field for the start of practice?
Yeah, look, the Steelers have already done the paperwork on that before those guys walk down and all, and they just don't make that stuff known until the last minute, right before practice happens. Now, how does the minutia of that all work? And he specifically says, does the player's location come into play? Do they call them the night before? So many other questions. Thank you for your time. Look, Rick, I tell you what, when you get these kind of the list of the guy, because they normally bring in like 3 guys at a time for a tryout earlier in the day, a lot of these guys are locally based. And for obvious reasons, right? You have a guy go down and practice one afternoon, and you need to get the roster spot filled, get a body out there the next day at a certain position. It's hard to get guys flown in and physicals and tryouts. So a lot of times when you look at some of these guys, they're either very accessible or they're guys from like Duquesne, Pitt, those kind of things, Slippery Rock, those kind of players that they probably have some knowledge on already. In fact, I think the list of the wide receivers that they brought in yesterday had a couple of local guys in it, right?
Oh, really? I didn't even know who else they brought in besides Blake, so I didn't even see the list of names.
Hold on, and then I'll
okay,
find that out for you.
I know the guys that aren't local, they get a call late at night and they're just catching the red eye out. And so I know some guys can be local, but typically a lot of guys will get called that evening, that night, and say, hey, can you catch the first flight out to Pittsburgh? They come in the morning, they work out in the morning, and then, of course, if they get signed, they stay. And so in terms of the actual evaluation process, that's typically happening in the morning, say 9, 10 o'clock a.m., and then Pittsburgh makes a decision. If you get signed, like you said, you sign your contract, your paperwork, and you come down for practice. So that's the minutia of it.
One of the wide receivers they brought in for a workout along with Christian Blake was Cyrus Holder out of Duquesne.
Okay.
The other one was Damian Willis out of Troy. Now, I don't know where these guys live, but, I would imagine, and poor kids too. What if they get in the airlines have had quite the disruptions as of late. You say, okay, I'm going down to the airport right now. I got a backpack, and the poor kid's flight gets canceled.
I'm sure that's happened. Yeah, but I mean, like Blake wasn't local though. At least I don't assume. So I'm sure he caught just a red eye. Just came in yesterday morning.
Right, but where might he have been located at? Let's see.
He lived in Florida. He was born in Florida. He played at Northern Illinois. I mean, he may have been local just for some other reason. I don't know, but I imagine because I know I know some of these guys will fly in.
Right. So, that's how the process works. I mean, the team after one practice ends, they probably get a player's injury evaluated, and especially if they're a border roster player anyway, and they have a database, I'm sure, and they just start, or Rolodex and say, all right, call this guy, call the agent of this guy. Let's see if we can get him in here for a workout. They get 3 in town, work them out, and then decide earlier in the day who they want. And then that's when the move's made.
All right. You take your physical and you're good to go. That's what the pro scouts are for. That is one job of the pro personnel department, is to have that list of names on the ready. They have that just sitting there. So if we got to get a receiver in there, somebody got hurt, they just look at the list and see who's available and inaccessible, and they just bring a couple of guys in and get a guy, get his physical, get his contract signed, and he's practicing.
All right, Craig Foster writes in, Alex, congratulations. The fact that all these so-called journalists are trying to tear apart your work means that you have finally clearly made it big time. Dave, please explain the salary cap implications for these players that go on the IR. What are the differences between the younger undrafted guys versus veterans like Gilbert? What are the various options for the players and the team? All right, first of all, for guys that are fully vested that have 4 years or more in, you don't waive those guys injured. And you can't just cut a guy that's injured either. So the guys that are more vested, that have the more than 4 years in, those guys, if they get injured, you immediately place them on IR. They don't have to clear waivers, and then you decide whether or not you want to work out an injury settlement with those guys. For the guys with 4 years or fewer, if they're injured, to get them to IR, you have to waive them first as injured with the injury designation, and if they clear waivers, then they revert to your IR list that way. Most of these players, these younger players that get waived injured and pass through waivers and go to IR, have split salary designations in their contract, meaning if they're on the active roster, they obviously get whatever the minimum salary for their accrued seasons is that way. But there's stipulations in that contract that say, okay, if you have to go to IR, you're going on a split salary. And if you look into CBA, there's a table for split salaries for the amount of accrued seasons, just like your regular minimum base salary for accrued seasons. So most of these players, these younger players, undrafted free agents, later round draft picks, and especially later round draft picks in the first 2 to 3 years of their contracts, they also have split salary designations in there as well too. Now, earlier in the show, we talked about who was the running back, Mink Nichols. Now, he's more of an established veteran. In fact, he did not have to clear waivers. He was just placed directly on IR. But when he signed with the Steelers, there was a split salary designation in there. So he is on a split salary on IR right now. All your undrafted rookies have split salaries. So that's the case with TD Moultrie right now. He immediately goes to, after he cleared waivers, he reverted to IR on a split salary. We talked earlier in the show about Ulysses Gilbert III. Now, he is a guy that the final 2 years of his contract, there was no split salary designation in there with him. So whatever he was on the 90-man roster at, scheduled to make in 2022, that just carries right on over to IR. along with his bonus proration that it was scheduled to be as well too. So he is basically on IR on a full amount there. Now, as we mentioned also during this show, you can work out injury settlements with these guys, and it's based on the salary that they're on IR at. So the agent of this guy might, of TD Moultrie, say, look, this injury is going to prevent him from doing anything, let's say the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. We would like an injury settlement of 3 weeks pay at his split salary amount. And then that'll be enough. If you don't give us that, then we're not settling. And then he's going to stay on your IR for as long as it takes for him to pass a physical. And
Gotcha.
And then once a player passes a physical that's on IR, the team can obviously they can release them outright from IR with no settlement, or obviously if it's a player that's under contract with you, he's just going to stay on IR. If he's got a star player or a guy that's under contract past this current season, he's going to stay on IR with you throughout the season there. So that's just kind of the overview of how that works. Most of these guys are going to be your younger fringe players that clear waivers, go to IR, and then they work out in injury settlement with them from probably anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. And I think the rule is now, if you work out an injury settlement with a player, and let's say it's a 3-week injury settlement, then I think you got to add 3 weeks onto that from the time that you waive him from IR with an injury settlement before he comes back to you. So let's say TD Moultrie, they gave him a 3-week injury settlement, and let's say they waive him tomorrow from IR with an injury settlement. I think he's got to get 3 weeks into the regular season plus 3 more weeks on top of that before he's eligible to re-sign with the Steelers. And what that does, it prevents teams from just using kind of a rotating door, if you will, and to try to get players back to them maybe a week after they cut them, that kind of thing there. So Craig, I hope that answers your question there.
I think it answered it well. It used to be 6 weeks in terms of the return. I think they modified that to 3. Right. And that's occasionally happened in Pittsburgh with injury settlement guy. There was one guy there's one name that I should be thinking of, tip my tongue, that I know came back. It doesn't happen often, but I know it has happened before. You know anyone who's come back on injury?
I see. Yeah, I know who you're talking. I know the situation. It doesn't ring a bell top of my head.
Anyway, but I think that's a good explainer on how, and that's the minutia that I know doesn't resonate with a lot of people, but it's an important part of this process. And I think when you outline, and that opened my eyes to how much dead money's or how much money's on IR right now, that is not a small chunk of change. And so that really opened my eyes to what that number is and how quickly it adds up.
All right, Xavier Robinson writes in, Dave, thank you. Dave and Alex, thank you both for all your hard work that you put in during training camp. Man, I'm wearing myself out back and forth to training camp. Your coverage makes it easy to be a Steelers fan while living in Minnesota. I have 2 questions for you both. First, unlike some of your listeners, I recognize the value of the special teams. It seems like the Steelers do too with some of their draft and free agent signings these past few years. I think the Steelers special teams could be one of the best in the league, given what they have in specialists like Boswell, Olszewski, Watt, Benny Snell, Marcus Allen, Miles Killebrew, Derek Tuska, Connor Hayward, and maybe Justin Lane and or Miles Boykin. The Steelers might win 1 or 2 games because of the special teams being an X factor. Where do you guys think the special teams unit as a whole stack up against the rest of the NFL? Do you think special teams could win us a game or 2? Second, I really like what I've heard from Alex about in camp from Carl Joseph. He's a high pedigree guy, being a former first-round draft pick and is regularly the first guy at practice with a lot of competition at safety. Do you think it's possible the Steelers keep 5 safeties? I could see a world where Minka, Edmonds, Casey, and 2 of Killebrew, Norwood, or Joseph making it. What are your thoughts there? All right, a lot to chew on there. First and foremost, it's impossible for me to stack the Steelers' current special teams outlook against other teams in the NFL because I just don't have my pulse on some of these other teams. But Xavier, I think you did hit on something there. I think a good special teams unit can steal you maybe one or two games. I think it could be the difference in it. We saw it last year in week 1 against Buffalo, right, Alex?
Yep.
In that aspect there. So, you're not going to have to twist our arm to pay attention to special teams. Alex and I talk so much about it that it makes listeners of the show get mad saying you guys pay too much attention to special teams value. But we do it because it is what it is, and the Steelers pay attention to it there. So I am expecting this special teams unit to be good enough to maybe steal the team 1 or 2 wins, and they better hope that it does steal 1 or 2 wins this year. Anything to add about special teams, Alex?
No, it's critical. And some of that we're not able to fully evaluate. How good will Harvin be as a punter this year? Field flipping is going to be really important. The offense probably will have a lot of 3-and-outs and punts this year, and Chris Boswell will be even more vitally important. He's won literal playoff games. He went 6 for 6 in a playoff game and beat the Bengals. And so, of course, special teams, your kicker is going to be really strong, really valuable, especially in December when the weather gets ugly and you're scratching and clawing and playing some AFC North, generally speaking, low scoring game. So yeah, I think certainly there's a net impact there of a win plus or a loss if your special teams unit does not play well. In terms of the second part of that question was about the secondary and kind of a rough overview of how the roster could look there, right?
Yes, about and specifically Carl Joseph. He wants to know, and you can obviously better answer this question. Camp Carl Joseph is having, and could you see a situation where they keep maybe like 5 safeties in total with KZ, Edmonds, and Minka, obviously being 3 of those 5?
Yeah, I just kind of
or assumed 3 of the 5.
Sure. I just scribbled down in my notes here where I'm kind of just off the top right now, and this could change and probably will change after the preseason game. My next roster update won't be until after Saturday's game, sometime this upcoming week. Let's put down 10 DBs. Let's assume they keep 10 defensive backs total. Here's the 10 that I'm rolling with as of today, August 12th. At cornerback, Cam Sutton, Ahkello Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, James Pierre, Arthur Millette. That's 5 corners. 5 safeties. Okay. Minka Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, DeMonte Casey, Trey Norwood, and Carl Joseph. I'm leaving Miles Killebrew off for now.
You didn't.
I just did. And so that's my 10 just off the top right now.
Now, you went into this camp probably thinking it might be a Casey or Norwood, right?
I left Casey, Millette, and Joseph off my initial 53. So there's a big change that I'm coming back to. I think I was wrong on Casey. Joseph has impressed me. Millette's got enough value, I think, as a slot guy, special teamer, and then Killebrew and Lane are coming off right now for me.
I don't think it's so much it's about being wrong as it is training camp providing more clarity on the. I mean, look, it's a dart shoot with a huge dart shoot before training camp even starts because we haven't laid our eyes on these guys and see how they're being utilized in practice, right?
Right. I mean, it happens. I'm not beating myself up about it, but I didn't know if Casey was going to get all those opportunities and still look as good and spry as he gets closer to 30, a couple of years removed from a torn Achilles. But I mean, I want to see if he gets any slot work since Minka's come back. He just kind of runs second team safety, and obviously the role's been reduced. But obviously he ran first team free safety with Minka out, which bodes well for his roster chances.
Let me see if I have an opportunity to wave a midway point checker flag here.
I mean, I know you haven't watched them, but if you had to pick a group of 10, does that sound right? Would you put Killebrew on? Because it's coming down to Killebrew versus Millette versus Joseph.
I like Killebrew. I think Killebrew's a better special teams player than Carl Joseph. But here are my 10 defensive backs in my pre-training camp 53-man roster.
Okay. Hit me.
Cameron Sutton, Ahkello Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, Arthur Millette, Justin Lane. It's not sounding super great for Justin Lane right now of those 5 corners. I kept 5 safeties. Minka, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Norwood, Miles Killebrew, DeMonte Casey.
I know you haven't watched them, but would you change anything based on the little that you've seen in terms of video on Twitter and the reporting that I and others have done up to this point.
I've got to be honest with you. I would, of anything there, you're talking about safeties?
Just a whole DB room of those 10. Any alterations?
From what you've told me, I need to get Justin Lane out there and maybe put a James Pierre in there.
Yes, I think that would be the smart thing to do.
Okay, so that's one. As far as the safeties go, I'm kind of wondering about Trey Norwood, man, and especially with you telling me Joseph and kind of the slot stuff that he's doing there. I'm interested in maybe a Joseph for Trey Norwood swap potentially.
Okay, that's right. It's not impossible, to use your phrase. I think Norwood's physicality has improved. I think there's versatility in his value, and I think he played well last year, so I still have him on. But
you feel it's more of a killer brew, an either or. The way you're leaning is more of a either or with Killer Brew or Carl Joseph, right?
Yes, and Millette still a little up in the air because if Joseph's going to play in the slot, then what's Millette's role going to be? And Norwood can play in the slot. Norwood's also been consistently the dime defender in the dime packages Pittsburgh's been running. He's at 6 DB, even ahead of Carl Joseph. And so I think they're going to want Norwood on those coverage downs. So that's one reason why I'm keeping Norwood on the 53.
Has Casey become a lock in your eyes at this point?
He's certainly a lot closer than where I had him at the start of training camp. I just want to know and see kind of what his role might be with Fitzpatrick back. Will he get any slot work, any dime work? Potentially. I haven't seen that so far, but the odds are pretty high, I would say.
Okay, good question, Xavier. Thank you. Let's see, from LCW, writes in, Dave, I have a roster procedure question that I'm sure you know the answer to just thinking about it. If and how a guy like T.J. Moultrie can circle back to the team if his injury is not season ending. He says, my understanding is that if an outside the bubble player gets significant injury in camp or preseason, the process goes like this. He says, 1, the team waives the player with an injury designation. 2, if the player clears waivers, he reverts to the team's IR list on a split salary. He's got everything correct at this point. At this point, he is no longer eligible to play in the season since he's on IR and not the 53-man roster before week 1. You're correct there. The team will look to reach an injury settlement with the player based on the expected number of weeks missed with the injury, then release him with that injury settlement. You are correct there. So all 3 of your points, LCW, are correct at this point. He says, at that point, can the Steelers re-sign that guy to the roster once he is healthy, either back to the 90-man roster in preseason or to the practice squad or 53 later? Now, he's not. I don't think he's eligible to come back to the 90-man roster for sure, because if an injury settlement's in there, there's a number of weeks that they're giving that player the injury settlement for as if it were the regular season and all like that. So, and I think we just kind of covered this, LCW, was the fact that if they give the guy, like, let's say a 3-week injury settlement, then that's for the first 3 weeks of the season. Then you have to add 3 weeks onto that. So you're talking about him not being able to come back to your specific roster for 6 weeks into the regular season, and then you can bring him back to like the practice squad or the 90 or something like that. I mean, not 90, the 53 or the practice squad.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, good explainer there. And again, I'm sure there'll be some more injuries, especially once you get inside stadiums, that'll make these questions relevant again.
All right. So you have a good chunk of that already in your head. So good on you. Hey, Jonathan here from South Carolina. Want to thank you guys for my draft contest winnings. He must have won a draft contest, guys. He said never got around to telling you guys thanks. Appreciate all your hard work. Listen to the podcast daily while completing my route at work. He says, one question here. Do you guys think Sutton will start the season in the slot, or will it be Millette or with Sutton outside? That's an Alex question up until this point.
I would say based on what I've seen, and Wallace has been limited, and there's a kind of weird rotation they've done there to start camp, but I would say Wallace, Witherspoon outside, Sutton in the slot for nickel packages come week 1. Yes.
All right, we have a hypothetical question here from Chris Lookhart, writes in, hypothetically speaking, if Pickett doesn't seem to be a franchise quarterback this year and you end up with a top 10 pick in the next year's draft, would you think about drafting another potential franchise quarterback? I know you have to give him more than 1 year, but what do you do if a top tier guy falls in your lap next year, or do you stick it out and stay with Kenny for a few years? Hey, I don't even want to even go there yet. And I mean, I don't see any scenario other than just Kenny having to play more than 2/3 of this season and being downright god awful. Somebody needs a spanking in the franchise if you get into position where you're in the top 10 of the draft next year and you're thinking, you know what, we better go get another quarterback here at this. Somebody has failed miserably, I think, at that point with the evaluation at Pickett. And even if Pickett does play 2/3 of the games this year and for some reason looks god awful, you got to give these young quarterbacks some time, I think. So my answer would be no. If you're in the top 10, you're not drafting a quarterback next year.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy hypothetical there. I am of the mindset of I'd rather teams admit their mistakes on draft picks sooner than later. And I just mean that as a very broad philosophical kind of thing. I think about the Cardinals stumping Josh Rosen and eventually leading themselves to Kyler Murray, and that worked out overall well for them. But I mean, let's say Pickett doesn't play at all this year, I don't know how you could justify go drafting a quarterback next year and not even knowing exactly how Pickett looks on a field. So he would have to play and then play poorly for that to really be a talking point.
All right, Todd Gensler. Hey, guys, is Pickens that good, or are the DBs that bad, or a little bit of both? Also, do you think Mason has a legitimate shot at being the starter? He still seems like performing the best and the most consistent. I've heard that with the acquisition of Trubisky and drafting a Pickett, it makes Mason starting a very long shot regardless. It's nice to be able to have so many valuable quarterback reps. Means so much during this year's training camp. Appreciate all your updates, hard work, and long days going to camp. Alex, rapid fire some of them answers out for him. Pickens that good, or the DBs that bad? A little bit both. And does Mason have a legitimate shot, Alex?
I would say Trubisky has about 90% chance to start. So if that gives Rudolph legitimate 10% or 8%, then that depends on how you define legitimate. I think Pickens has been that good. I mean, the DBs have made plays as well. That just gets talked about less because Witherspoon makes a great play on Pickens, gets less clicks than Pickens makes a great play on Witherspoon. But I think Pickens has had all the traits. And again, some of those things have been 1v1s where the receivers are going to be have more of the advantage in the DBs. There's give and flow. One guy makes a great play in camp means that probably one guy didn't make a great play and vice versa. So I'm not too worried about the DBs overall based on Pickens. Pickens has done that to all of these DBs. So I think it just means that Pickens is playing well.
Jim Bendis, why do the Steelers quarterbacks not wear red jerseys? Number 2, do you think Mike Tomlin watches Hard Knocks? Nothing else to watch Randall L.
Oh, to watch Randall L on the Lions. I don't know why they don't wear red jerseys. I want to say Tomlin has been asked about that once or twice. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I guess just because they don't wear red jerseys on games either. And so just know who the quarterback is, be aware enough to know which guy the quarterback is. And no, I don't think Tomlin's watching Hard Knocks.
All right. Rapid fire. It's been a while since we said, I want to make sure we get to some people here. Nick Shuley's in. Dave and Alex, what's your favorite piece of Steelers memorabilia you guys own? Keep up the great work. Alex?
I don't have a ton of Steelers memorabilia this is my Chidi Iwoma autographed jersey, so probably that, if that counts as memorabilia. I also picked up a couple months ago a Big Daddy Lipscomb football card, and so I have that sitting in my office, and so I like that. But I don't have a ton of it's more from when I was a kid. I haven't acquired stuff much recently. Yeah,
and I'm obviously twice Alex's age, and look, the older I've gotten, I don't know, the less memorabilia that kind of stuff means to me. But I mean, look, I'm staring right now a mini Hall of Fame helmet that signed by the Franco Harris that Alex Kozora got me. And I think that's meaningful from several aspects, because that's a kind of a childhood guy in Franco Harris, and Alex it means a lot in my life. So he sent that to me, and we also had Franco Harris on the Terrible podcast. Mm-hmm. So there's, there's kind of three things tied up into one tiny piece of memorabilia at this point. And he sent that to me not too terribly long ago. At this point, I don't have a lot of Steelers memorabilia. Now, I do have quite a card collection that at some point, probably in these coming months, I think I'm going to be shipping over to Alex to have for young Trevor Kozora.
Oh, can we stop? I thought we were done with that. We all forgot.
I would like Trevor Kozora to have this card collection here of mine here, and is going to get that taken care of at some point. So I just, I guess from just having to stay on my feet so much, and I just hadn't been something, memorabilia just hasn't really played a large part, I don't think, overall in my life. Yeah, I have some autographs here and there and all, but anyway, that's where are on that. One last one here. Is there a piece of memorabilia that you would like to maybe get, Alex? I mean, I would love something, maybe a TJ Watt signed helmet or something along those lines, because I think he's going to be, or he is that good, but overall, I think because it takes up space and that kind of stuff, I just haven't been high on it. What about you?
I feel like you have space in the Steelers Depot Metroplex Vegas edition.
I do, like but let me tell you, the whole reason we had a huge house in Florida and all like that, and my dysfunctions, and once I quit, I turned my life around with certain chemicals in my life and all like that. I became we've been together for 30 years, right? So you accumulate a lot of stuff, and it just got to the point where I was having, just feeling overwhelmed, panic attacks and all like that, because I had so much stuff. So we downsized quite a bit. I mean, I sold off guitars and all like that, just because I wanted to simplify my life, because I felt so overwhelmed about the stuff that we had. So, and that made it easier to kind of downsize and not have the upkeep of such a large house on top of it too, So I like not having a lot of stuff now, if that makes sense. I feel better. I don't feel so anxious by, it's hard to explain unless you have, and look, I have dysfunctions. My dysfunctions have dysfunctions. So I don't know if that helps explain it there.
No, I get that. I think when I grew up in the house and we had a bunch of just stuff. My mom is a collector, not a hoarder, but just doesn't want to throw out a whole lot of stuff. My George Carlin quote of the day yesterday is fitting. It was a house is just a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. And so that sums it up. Well, I think you have room there. I think a TJ Watt signed something can fit in the Metroplex. I would like to collect the old timey stuff. You guys know I love the pre-Noel. I just mentioned my Big Daddy football card. I would love just to have stuff from, I don't know, LB Nickel, Jack Butler, and just that era would kind of be like the things that I would want to have. I don't really collect anything in general. I'm not, this is my hobby. I just write and blog about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't really have I don't collect, watches or cards that much, although I'll very happily, take on your card collection, because I think it's going to be really cool to sift through. But I'm not a big stuff guy. I'd rather have not a lot of stuff in the house.
I tell you what I've sort of gotten into since moving to Vegas is, I forgot about it, but it's right here, because it's kind of twofold with what we do and all like that. I've started buying old Steelers media guides off of eBay and all like that. And I've got and they don't take up a lot of room, and I keep them right here in my drawer next to me. And a lot of these are in pristine kind of condition, and it's kind of at a glance of, I've got some here. Let's see.
What's the oldest one that you have?
Let's see. 77. I've got a damn near, not mint, but a barely used 77 media guys, 78, 79, 85, 86, 87, 89, and 90. So And these are just within my reach right here. So that's a nice little, I guess, memorabilia kind of twofold memorabilia thing to get into. How about that?
So is that how you do it when you just have the random poll of, hey, who was the Steelers left guard in training camp of 82? You just go straight to that media guide. That's the secret.
Yeah, crapper material.
I have an old one. I think it's like 84 or somewhere around here. I don't know where the heck it's at, but I like that. That's a cool one to collect. So that one from 77, I mean, they were pretty small back then, pretty skinny, I think. So like, what is that one? What does that look like when you thumb through it compared to today's media guide, which isn't even printed? It's just, virtual.
Right.
A PDF file.
I think it's a lot of the same stuff, but I think it's the good news is I think back then let me thumb through some of this here real quick. And
the cover is just, I assume it just says Steelers 1977.
And just a picture of the helmet and all like that. It says $1 on it. What? $1. Price is right.
You're one price. All right. I like it. We do sound so old right now. We are the oldest two people.
We do
on the podcast right now.
The quick little at a glance player bios are neat to kind of sift through and go through the stats and stuff like that is nice. So that's a fairly inexpensive, I guess, memorabilia hobby twofold thing to get into there. So
if you don't mind me asking, how expensive is that? You said it's inexpensive, but like how much is this? Because I assume that there's a scarcity to a 77.
Yeah, I think I'd pay, I don't know, $30, $40.
Oh, that's not bad.
A piece for some of these. I don't know. Maybe the most I paid for one of these like $70 or $80 or something.
I mean, that's not too bad. There are far more expensive hobbies than that, I'm sure.
Now I'm going to get everybody competing against me to get these things off eBay now.
Yeah, Steelers Depot hater.
Yeah.
3740 is going to be buying all the media guides.
Yeah, 789-6548. The guy with the Twitter number that goes all the way out there. One last one. Kevin Gomez from Sydney, Australia. Dave and Alex, just a question about relating to restructures, as it's something I've never fully understood. What happens when a player's contract is restructured? As I understand what you mean when you say kicking the can down the road, but is this delaying the player from getting paid? Is there any reason why players would allow this, or do they not get a say? Also, Alex, I saw a post on Facebook from a page called Heavy on Steelers showing your tweet about quarterback stats. Just want to let you know in case you weren't aware of someone using your content. Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work. Schooners are on me when you guys make it over here to Australia. Sydney, Australia. Restructures. All right, think of it this way. A player is owed $10 million base salary in 2022. And let's say his cap hit is $12 million because of previous bonus proration. The extra $2 million is in there that's already been paid to the player, but is in there for cap purposes. Let's say you want to get that player's cap number down. What you do is you pay him you can only take the base salary down as low as what his minimum allotted CBA salary can be for that certain year in accrued seasons. Let's just round it and say that number would be $1 million. That's the lowest that you can take it down to. Well, 10 million minus 1 million is 9 million. So what you do is you pay that guy 9 million of the 10 million he was scheduled to earn as in the form of a signing bonus, which is fully guaranteed, so that you can stretch out the cap, how you would account for it against the cap for the remaining years of the contract. There really is there's not a reason why a player wouldn't want to do that other than, I don't know, I think I've heard tax reasons maybe, and how the actual installments of that end up being worked out but overall it's not a negative for the player. All right.
Right.
A restructure is done for a team to be able to lower the player's cap number down. It's not, the player does not lose money in this whatsoever. I have heard things maybe because of how maybe some taxes and how some of this stuff is paid sometimes, maybe how that can impact the player. Now, does the player and the agent have say in this? Most of the time, yeah, but sometimes I have heard that sometimes they'll put in there in these mega extensions that they give to these players that maybe in the year prior we have the ability to restructure this contract to help ourselves out with cap purposes there. But in no way, shape, or form does a player lose money in a restructure.
Yeah, not at all. So good explainer there. I know it's so you've been certainly heavy and asked a lot about the contract stuff, but that is the time of year where this all comes into play.
All right. I think we have all that covered there overall. Appreciate it. I know it's been a while since we've addressed a lot of these emails. It's about that time. Alex, preseason football. How about that? We are going to be 8 up with tape and everything here over the course of the next 48 hours. It's just a very exciting look. We're going to have everything you need on SteelersDepot.com, pregame articles, all that stuff, game threads during it, those kind of things as well too. So we hope you check us out there. And obviously right after the game is over with, we'll cover all the post-game press conferences. We'll have film rooms. It is a great time to be alive. So make sure you stay alive and partake with us in this great time of year here. So with that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar as well too. Alex, fantastic work. I know you're just excited as I am. I can't wait to get back with you on, I think, when's the next be
Monday.
Monday will be the next version of the Terrible Podcast. And then Monday night, I think we'll be having another special edition of the training camp version of the Terrible Podcast as well, too. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.